Today, we are going to be talking about why adults with chronic illnesses need trained caregivers. Why elders with chronic illnesses need trained caregivers. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Teresa Tabe. Dr. Teresa, you're welcome to this Health Awareness Series program. And I would like you to introduce yourself to our viewers from across the world.
Mhm.
And tell us a little bit about your personal, life, your education, and your career.
Okay, thank you for having me, Father G. Thank you for having me. So, I am a trained psychiatric nurse provider in the state of Texas, precisely Dallas, the Dallas Metroplex. And I am glad to be here to join Father God's will to create awareness in providing quality home care to our elderly back home and even here as well. So care is needed, quality care is needed at home and abroad. So my specialty is psychiatry, mental health. I also do have 12 years of bedside nursing. Started off as a CNA, LVN, RN, bachelor's, master's, and up to this point, the doctoral level. So I started from the bottom, like they say, and here I am. I've had over 2 decades of experience in the healthcare sector. And so at this point, my niche is mental health care. And I'm glad to be here to contribute to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Teresa. I have known Dr. Teresa for over two decades.
Mhm.
And Teresa and I worked together at St. Elizabeth Elder Care Center when I was the chaplain for Catholic Charities. At that time, she was a nurse taking care of elders uh, in that beautiful elder care home. And from there, she has moved on to do her master's and doctorate in nursing, specializing in psychiatric nursing, mental health, and have, you know, asked her to join us today because of her wealth of experience, both from the time she was working as a bedside nurse, as a caregiver at St. Elizabeth Elder Care, Center, and now as a psychiatric nurse who has to grapple with um, the mental health of elders, but also as well as the larger population of our society. And so we can't find any better person to discuss this issue today and to bring out to us why elders with chronic illnesses need trained home caregivers. And
Mhm.
so I hope I'm looking forward to getting enriched by her wealth of experience and education. And I hope that, we can listen to her and put into good use what she has learned over decades now. So thank you, Teresa, for joining us. And
Mhm.
we're happy to have you here today. We shall start off by asking about your parents. I know you have the elders in your house. You probably have a mom or a dad
Yeah.
or elder grandparents or some elderly people around you. I guess you have.
Mhm.
Can you share with us about elderly people around your house? Do you have some elderly people around you, and
Yeah.
how are you relating with them?
Of course, I'm surrounded by the elderly. And day in day out, I hear one or two challenges from them. So with the work I do, I'm exposed to people from all walks of life and all ages. But I do have a special love for the geriatric population, given that I worked in a long-term care facility together with Father Godswill, Catholic Charities in Baltimore. We had extensive experiences with elderly people, and also my mother living with me, who was with me for over a decade. I could see. So I was able to apply the knowledge that I gained from St. Elizabeth and also at home here with the elderly population that I do take care of. I see people with comorbid conditions, even though my specialty right now is mental health psychiatry, but I do still have to consider a holistic approach when I provide care for patients, because someone could come to me for mental health problems, but they do have diabetes, they have hypertension. So I have to look at the holistic approach when I prescribe medications, because we don't want one medication to cancel out the other, or one medication having an adverse reaction with the other, and that could be counterproductive and even more serious consequences on the patient's health. So I always look at things holistically to optimize um, their medication use, as well as to minimize polypharmacy and just make sure the symptoms are well managed. Elderly people are prone with commonly with diabetes, hypertension, obesity, because they are mostly sedentary. And so having a trained care provider makes a lot of difference. You just don't want to drag anyone and throw in to take care of your grandparents or your parents. Cheap labor is everywhere, but we lack quality labor. And so that is where the emphasis will be today, getting people that are well trained to be able to take care of our elderly. They took care of us even in more difficult circumstances. So it's our turn to pay back, to pay forward, and to do the same for them. And even better, because we live in a much more better societies. Technology is evolving rapidly, so we have no excuse to settle for less, giving our parents untrained care, putting their
Oh,
lives at risk.
okay, thank you, Teresa. Guess you
Yes,
have
sir. Mhm.
provided a very quick summary of the entire conversation. But
Okay.
let's go bit
Mhm.
step by step. I want you to begin by
Mhm.
sharing your personal experience with
Mhm.
us, whether your experience at the long-term care nursing home where
Mhm.
you worked, or your experience with elders in your family. Uh,
Mhm.
what have you to say about chronic illnesses among elders? Is this something that you find prevalent among elders? Is this something that um, you think that is, very common across board?
Mhm.
You are from Cameroon, from Africa,
Yeah.
and now you work
Mhm.
in the United States. It would be nice to bring your experiences from Africa and,
Mhm.
and your experiences here in the United States,
Yeah.
to say that generally, elders are, deal with chronic illnesses, or they don't, because people
Mhm.
always
Yes.
make this claim. We don't want to be making a blanket claim, so that's why I
Mhm.
go step by step.
Mhm.
How prevalent are chronic illnesses among
Mhm.
elders? And I want you to be
So
a yes, you are. And
yeah.
you can also share personal experiences. That would be nice.
Mhm.
How prevalent are
Okay.
chronic illnesses, and which chronic illnesses are prevalent among elders? Let's tackle that
Mhm.
first.
Okay. Chronic illnesses are much more prevalent. Not that every elderly has a chronic condition, but it's prevalent. And I think 60 to 80% of elderly people have chronic conditions stemming from diabetes, hypertension, um, COPD, breathing problems, and all respiratory problems, as well as gastrointestinal problems. So those conditions are very prevalent in
Okay.
the elderly.
But why do you think that elderly people have these chronic diseases as against the much younger people?
So several factors do account for this. It could be genetics, it could be lifestyle, it could be just due to poor health care or access or zero or little access to health care. Yeah, those are the main factors that accounts for those chronic problems.
And also, I think people also think that the more we get, the older we get,
Yeah,
our vital organs, probably
yeah,
get weaker and are no longer
yeah. The efficacy reduces. Yeah,
meaning that, elderly people then become more vulnerable
more,
to
yeah.
sicknesses than the younger people. So now tell me, you worked at an elder care for over a decade, and so what was your experience? How did the elders deal with the chronic illnesses? How did they, how did they manage the chronic illnesses themselves? And how did you help them manage the chronic illnesses when you were working with them?
So working with the elderly for over a decade exposed me to a variety of conditions, and so we took care of them. They did their own part, but most of them, 90% of the care was on us, the nurses. So good thing I was a trained nurse, so I knew what I was doing, and so I was there to provide company guidance and care, as well as family and patient education. So we were the main care providers. They were just there to, live the rest of their days, rehabilitate, social activities for elderly, and just to keep the time going. They've worked the rest of their life. So to most of them, it was retirement, and very few came in for rehab, but mostly that is like the that is where the end of life care begins for them. That is home for them until they meet their maker again. So we took care of them medically, physically, emotionally, and companionship wise.
Okay, so thank you so much. Then you took care of them medically, physically, emotionally, and companionship wise. We shall take this one after the other. So,
Yeah.
medically, what did you do for the elders that they couldn't do for themselves? What did you
Mhm.
do for them?
Yeah.
Tell
Medically monitoring doing their
us
health
what your day,
assessments.
yeah, tell me
Mhm.
what your day looked like, uh,
Yes.
medically when you
Yes.
are taking care of the elders.
Yeah. So working for a well-structured and facility like that, we had schedules. So you come in at 7 a.m. The 7 a.m. kicks off. The 7 a.m. shift kicks off with the nurses coming in, taking over from the night nurses. So 7 a.m. first thing we go in, we're checking vital signs, you know, blood pressure, heart rate, pulses, and also checking blood sugar levels at that time, and weighing them. Sometimes making sure we are weighing them to ensure that the weight is not they're not losing weight rapidly in a unhealthy weight loss. So after that, we will go into cleaning them up, getting them out of bed, washing them up, getting them dressed with the help of the nursing assistants. And then we go into the dining room where they have their breakfast. Not everyone was a breakfast person. Some people preferred brunch, but we made sure everyone was up in the morning, dressed, vital signs assessed, breakfast taken. Then we go on to medication administration. So this is the morning part of it, medication administration. Then by the time we are done with this morning routine, it's 12. Then we're now prepping for lunch and afternoon medication pass. Some people have medication scheduled twice a day. Some people do have their medication scheduled 3 times a day. So, but we also have parameters where we administer most of the medications. For instance, if you're a hypertensive patient, we cannot just give you maybe medications like Novartis without checking your blood pressure to see that it is within a high range where you need this medicine at this time. So we had a very good structure in place, and And so we're going to lunch. They eat lunch, and after lunch, they can do some elderly activities, fun social activities, bingo, playing cards, watching TV, old time movies. Some of them could go on trips with assistance from the activity people. And then we're in the course of this, we're also still making sure we are, for those who are diabetic, we are checking their blood sugar levels to avoid any unsafe drops. We're checking blood pressures every 8 hours. And then by the time all of this is done, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. comes around and our shift ends. The afternoon shift comes and takes over. The afternoon shift works from 3 to 11 p.m. And then they hand over to the night shift. The same routine continues. Then we come back in the morning and take over. So there was a good structure in place and good resources to help these people.
Thank you so much. This is really fantastic. So you guys were on top of their medical plans. You were guys were in charge. You made sure they had their medicine in the morning, in the afternoon. You checked their
Yeah.
vital signs and everything. Why were these important? Why did you have to do all this every morning? Why did you have to check their vital signs every morning? Why did you have to check their BP every morning? I mean, I don't check mine every day.
Mhm.
Why did you have to do all that?
Because this population, with this population, they're very vulnerable and fragile, and their numbers can change really fast. First of all, they don't have a big appetite like us regularly young adults or maybe middle-aged adults. Their appetite is not really there. They most of them do have diminished appetite, and also orientation wise, cognitively, they are not really cognitively sound 100%. So they are forgetful. They have diminished appetite. They are disoriented. Some of them don't even know where they are. So we are literally their eyes and ears and hands and everything because an unsafe drop in blood sugar could lead to diabetic coma. And if not caught on time, they can die. And also an unsafe drop in blood pressure as well. So these numbers are very good. It's very important to monitor these numbers closely for the elderly because their bodies do not regulate as the body of younger people.
Okay. Thank you so much. Fantastic response there to the role you guys played, especially medically, as
Yeah.
nurses and caregivers to the elderly people. But tell me about other roles you played. Tell me, you said you guys also played some social roles, some
Yeah.
emotional roles for them. Tell me, give me examples of some of the social and emotional things that you did for the elderly people while working with them.
For those who are maybe in their late 60s to 70s and 80s, who still had some physical strength and would love to go out, they went out on excursions. They went out on field trips. Baltimore has quite a good number of sightseeing uh, events or locations. So they will go down maybe to the Baltimore Harbor for a day of sightseeing. They could go, some of them love to go to the casino. We will make arrangements for that. They will go to the casino. For those who loved music, there was a music guy who came in and played the piano for them, played their old time music for them, and that just gave them a sense of belonging and made some of them have a purpose to live again. So there are sectors there because the facility was big and well structured. So there were different specialties and different people in charge of these activities. There was a driver who there was a good transport team with a driver who come in and took them to all of these activities. And there was a good established schedule too to avoid any overlaps in schedules. And even as they go out to these activities, we are very conscious that the ones that are diabetics or hypertensive, they are going with their medications or they have taken their medications before leaving the facility, and they are accompanied by a nurse just in case there is any emergency during the outings. And they went to the chapel. We had a chapel attached. You were our chaplain at the time. Some of them just love to sit in the chapel and just pray the rosary, attend mass, and just be in the presence of God. And some of them actually went home to visit their families. Families will come and visit. Sundays were fun. Sundays were really fun because after breakfast, family members would come, stop by after church, visit them, bring them flowers, food, take some of them out for a couple of hours and bring them back. So
Okay.
it was like home for them, even though it
Okay.
was a nursing facility, but it felt like home for them. We tried to give them something close to home.
Okay. Thank you so much, Teresa. Tell me about your role as a caregiver, a nurse in
Mhm,
an elder care facility, your nutritional role. Did you play any
mhm.
role, or
Yeah.
even if you didn't play
Oh,
any role,
yes.
how
Yes.
how important, how did you support their nutrition?
Yeah.
Giving them their food, was it important that you were there to support them with their nutrition, and what
Yeah.
difference did that make?
Yes. So when I worked for this facility, I started as a bedside nurse. Then I also, at some point, I had a opportunity to be a nurse supervisor. So we are very fully involved when it comes to their meal planning because when you're looking at the health of an individual, you want to look at a holistic picture. A patient with diabetes, the meal the menu is clearly has to be different from a hypertensive patient or a patient with COPD, or and so we were very involved to make sure that someone who has diabetes, we are very conscious of what is on their plate at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The same went for patients with hypertension. There were cases that patients with congestive heart failure, they will have to be on fluid restriction. We had to monitor those closely because being in a facility where there were people with different qualifications, we had the respiratory therapist, we had the registered nurse, we had the nurse aide, we had the psychiatrist, we had a nutritionist as well. But the interdisciplinary team worked together for the common good of the patient. So if I walked into the dining room and I saw that my diabetic patient at lunchtime already has a big meal of mashed potatoes, a chicken, and a big glass of orange juice. And then they have a big dessert of maybe a big piece of a cake for dessert. I'll be concerned. I'll be concerned because this will lead to a spike in their blood sugar levels. And if blood sugar is not monitored 2 hours after that to give them insulin, it could escalate. So it was a good interdisciplinary team. We worked together and everyone was on their toes to monitor these details closely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So the caregivers played a lot of role in the diet and the meals that the elders ate in the facility where you worked. Now,
Mhm.
talk to me about companionship. I know you
Yeah.
have to me about activities, social activities, but talk to me about companionship. Um, how was your role as a caregiver, as a nurse, important in providing?
Mhm.
How was, relevant to companionship? Were you able to provide companionship to some of the elders that were there? Because
Yeah.
at that time they had become lonely, their children
Mhm.
are no longer there, were no longer there, and you guys, the nurses, were those providing care. Um,
Mhm.
how did you provide companionship, or you were not allowed to provide companionship to the?
Oh, companionship is very important. It's a vital part of their lives because loneliness can lead to depression, and and the life and they might just end up deteriorating. So companionship is key for these people. Not all of them had chronic problems, but there are people who were there because their children were busy with their lives. So they had to bring them there so they could be in the company of other people. Yes, we did have a recreational therapist who will come and play games with them, take them to sit out on the porch and have some morning sunlight, take them for walks. But as nurses, we were always supervising to make sure the patients or the residents are getting the right recreational activities at the right time. And so there were times that even if the recreational therapist is not there, in the process of me doing my nursing charting, sitting at the nursing station doing work, I could just bring one of the patients or residents, we call them residents, to sit next to me in their wheelchair. So while I'm documenting, doing other things, and they just know that I am there. They can talk to me. I am there to listen. They just sitting next to me was enough for most of them. And sometimes we just some families could afford extra help to bring in an extra sitter to sit with them and make sure whatever they needed they get it. Maybe a drink of water, had their nails trimmed, just listen to them, talk to them, read stories to them. So yeah, that's how companionship worked at the facility.
Thank you so much. Before we jump into some other things, I would like to ask you one final question about, your experience at the structured facility for elders in Baltimore. What was your interface with the family of the elders like? Were you always in touch with their families? Were you
Mhm,
giving them update about, the health or nutritional
mhm,
or psychological condition of their
mhm.
families? How much access did you have to the family, and how much communication did you have with the family regarding
Mhm.
the care of their loved ones?
Yeah, we had full access to all family members listed. So each patient or each resident has a chart. And on the front sheet, we call it face sheet. The face sheet of that patient's chart contains their contact information, emergency contact, medical power of attorney for if we were to make any medical decisions, financial power of attorney if we were to make any financial decisions for them. So there was full contact, and this contact were updated almost every month or every quarterly to make sure we have the right numbers. And so, if, for instance, I see that a patient is going down, there's a decline in their health, or there's a change in health status or mental status, it's my duty to immediately alert the doctors and then the families. So we were fully in touch, giving the families full details, daily updates in case there were any changes. And for those who did not have maybe direct family members, some of them had guardians, some of them had friends, close friends, significant others, and we had those contacts on file. So, for instance, if I go into Mr. A's chart, I can see all of those numbers. I know who to call in case of finances. I know who to call in case they need new clothes, socks, shoes, slippers, in case they need a haircut. We also had people who came and did that in the facility haircut. Now, for the ladies, they had hair grooming. We had this salon on site where once a week the residents were welcome to come in and get their hair done. A podiatrist came in every month to trim their nails. So
Okay.
that was the day-to-day details. Mhm.
Thank you so much. So that was a robust, yeah, conversation, your
Yeah.
engagement with the family members of
Hmm.
elders, as well as medical professionals and other people that they would need their services. Um,
Yeah.
so much, Teresa, for a robust and an extensive discussion on your experience with elders in a structured elder care facility. But let's
Yeah.
move away from a structured elder care facility and let's go to the elders that live in their own homes. Um,
Hmm.
Not every elder would go to a structured care facility.
Right. Not every elder is institutionalized or being some families are capable of keeping their elderlies at home.
So I wanted to know from you
Mhm.
whether you have, as a nurse, as a caregiver, ever taken care of an elder in his or her home,
Yeah.
whether that elder is somebody you are contracted to take care of, or maybe a family member, but you've done this as a nurse, as a caregiver.
Mhm.
So you are taking care of the person, as a nurse or as a caregiver, whether
Mhm.
or informally. Have you had such experiences or your life?
So yeah, so like I said, my experience spans from a home health aide. That's where I started. So when I first came to the U.S. as a young lady in my early 20s, I started off providing care in private home settings. That was after my training. So at that time, which is over 20 years ago, we had like a 1 month training to provide care for elderlies at home. But it wasn't really specialized care because the family members were there and they still went to the doctors and all of that. So I would basically go into a home. My job description at that time was also very limited in scope. It was limited to um, uh, grooming, dressing them, and just sitting there with them. And then it progressed to the point where now I'm walking in a facility. So home care is very good for those who can afford it. It's very good. There are some people who say, "Hey, listen, I have the money. I have enough money in my retirement coffers. I don't want to go into a facility. I want to stay in my home and just bring a caregiver to come take care of me at home." And in a
Yeah.
case like that, go ahead.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
that's where I want us to, talk
Yeah.
about.
Yes.
We have a 45 minutes conversation. So you started
Yes.
as the home caregiver, but of course, with the 1 month of training you had limited,
Limited. And then we were as
but
so
there were
also
people
mhm,
who had more training and
more
who
training.
were going to homes to
Hmm.
provide care. I wanted to know
Yes.
what that experience would look like, if one is providing care beyond your own experience, your own training.
Hmm.
At that time,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there must be some trendy home caregivers who also go to families and then they were able to check blood pressure, BP,
Yep. Yeah.
sugar.
Hmm. Yes.
So,
At some point I had to do that, and then I went for further training, became a LVN licensed a vocational nurse, and then RN. So I was even as an RN, I still did private home calls where I
okay.
would still go in. Now with a broader scope of practice, I had to go and check their vital signs, check their
Mm-hmm,
blood sugar levels,
mm-hmm,
administer medications
mm-hmm.
carefully. Yes, and also make sure I provide their meals based on their diagnosis.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so even when people are at home,
Hmm.
um, a particular caregiver can provide as much support
Yes.
as you people were providing in the facility. Even though in
Hmm.
the facility we have people trained for different things, of course, somebody
Yes.
in his house or in his home would not have a bunch of caregivers coming every day.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
somehow, some way, those caregivers probably must have been trained,
Yeah.
to be able to take care of some of these basic things that you
Hmm.
had various professionals taking. For example, I recall that when we were at St. Elizabeth, we had people who were specialized in nutrition.
Yes.
Right. And they were very engaged in making sure that those people had good meals. But when you're
Hmm.
going to be a caregiver for somebody in his home and you're the only person they have hired,
Hmm.
probably will also need to have some ideas about the person's nutrition. In addition
Yes.
to being able to check, do his blood work, check his
Hmm.
sugar and everything,
Hmm.
as well as being a companion. So
Hmm.
caregiver at home is everything
It
to the
is.
elder.
Yes.
And um, tell me your experience about being
It's-
everything to an elder at home as
yes.
a facility where a nurse did their medical thing, psychologists did their therapists did their therapeutic stuff, and
Hmm.
nutritionists did their nutrition stuff, activity people did their activity stuff. But now you are the only one taking care of
Hmm.
this elder in his home. So you both do the medical stuff, at least to some
Yeah.
that you were
Yes.
trained. You both do
Yeah.
the nutritional stuff. you do the activity stuff for the elder, you also
Mm-hmm.
the even the companionship, psychological stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, how was that experience,
Yeah.
and how helpful has that been, or was that to the patients, to the elders that you took care of? At least no matter how short that experience was.
Yes. So I had a particular case that is still in my memory, that lives in my memory rent free. I had a patient in his 70s, a stroke patient, right? So this patient has limited mobility. Of course, a stroke patient, most of them have limited mobility. They have a dysphagia, which is difficulty swallowing. They cannot swallow the food, and then their food have to be a specific consistency, and then at the same time they had other comorbid conditions, diabetes, hypertension, and then they're non-verbal. So when you go into a patient's home like that, you're the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the everything. So this is a patient who lives by themselves. Family is out of town, they stop in once in a while. So I am everything for this patient. I was everything for this patient at that time. So a typical day for me with this patient, it was a 12-hour shift. It was difficult. So I'll go in 7 a.m. in the morning, first thing, get him out of bed, do some bodily exercises, get him showered, check his vital signs, administer his meals. And of course, feeding a stroke patient takes patience and time. I'll make sure the food is in a good, safe consistency for them. So just feeding time will take us over an hour just to feed him. And then after that, I will administer his medications, then sit him down maybe in front of his TV as he's watching TV. I'm now maybe taking care of the dishes, making sure I'm putting together what he's going to have for lunch, and then just talking with him, providing companionship in the process of this. Because this case, it was just me and this patient in this home. And so good training is very important because
Okay.
anything can go wrong with any system, and you are the only person there.
Okay, thank you so much, Teresa. I think you have covered or you've shared your experience with us at a structured facility. You have also shared your experience with us caring for an elder at his or at her home, and rich experiences, fantastic
Yeah.
experience. And
Yeah.
thank you for the great job that you have done for the elders in the past. Now I want us to take this conversation back home in Africa,
Yeah.
where currently we have many elders living by themselves. Either
Mhm.
as a result of migration, the children have traveled out of the
Mhm.
village to look
Mhm.
for greener pastures, or because of the work schedules, the work pressure. The
Mhm.
children, sons and daughters, are no longer able to be with their loved ones on regular basis. Uh,
Yes.
we don't have a
The
lot of
facilities, the amenities,
facilities,
the
and I
resources.
want us to stay. I want you to stay. I want us to stay with what we have for now. Why there might be possibilities to build facilities, and it's a conversation whether our elders in Africa, given our communal culture, would even
Mhm.
want to go to facilities. But
Mhm.
what do you think about home caregiving in Africa? What
Mhm.
do you think, how do you think that, you know, um, children should start providing caregivers for their loved ones in Africa who are
Of
living alone
course.
or living with one or two people? How relevant, how important is this,
Mhm.
especially for those who have elders that have chronic illness? You have
Mhm.
shared your experience caring for this elder
Mhm.
that had stroke, and I'm sure that being with him was very helpful to him.
Mhm. Mhm.
How can that help our parents and grandparents and elderly people in Africa whose children are now in America, in Europe?
Mhm.
They are all left behind in Africa with a naive maid or
Mhm.
housekeeper or has boy
Mhm.
taking care of them. What have you learned from this home care experience that you think
Mhm.
bring to Africa?
So even though I live in the US, but I've been very much in touch with what is going on back home. Our mother lived with us here in the US for over 11 years, and then she retired and went back home. She got tired of America and wanted to be back home with her people. So I will use my mom. I will use our case as the as an example. So she's currently in the village somewhere in Cameroon. And to still give her the quality of care that she has been accustomed to while she was here, it's difficult, but we do the best, right? So we have someone who takes care of her. She has a comfortable home, but she's in her 80s. See, she's almost 83. So she has someone who helps her in the morning to make sure she has groceries. If she has she's down with in her health or needs physical help to cook, prepare her meals, there's somebody there. Thankfully, our mother doesn't have chronic health problems. She's very healthy, but her strength is failing, and so she needs help. But in a situation where someone were to have chronic problems, diabetes, hypertension, stroke, and all of this, they need help, and they need the help of a trained person. So, like I said, back home, there is cheap labor, but there's no quality and competent labor. And competent labor is very important for our parents. We have a lot of older people back home with children abroad. The least they can do is get a health a help, someone who knows what they're doing to live in home with them, or just go in and out daily. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you answered the question,
Okay.
but we wanted to also know how important must
It
the
is very important. Our parents took care
must
of
the
us with
person to
little or
be with
nothing.
your
So it's
parents.
our turn. Yeah,
Yeah,
our
but
parents took care of us. It's our turn to also do the same for them. If you can bring your parents abroad, fine. But also bringing them abroad is not a solution because we still have to go to work, and they are home lonely. So I think having them in Africa is still good, but get them quality trained care.
yeah, that's what I'm that's the issue because I
Mm-hmm.
mean most of our parents or our grandparents in Africa, they have meds, they have
Mm-hmm.
hard boys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean there are plenty of people who are not doing anything that you could grab to take care of your parents, but
Mm-hmm.
are these people good enough to take care of our aging
I've
parents?
had horrible stories, like people going into their homes, stealing from them, stealing money from them, stealing their food, and even abusing them physically, especially for parents who are already like having altered mental status where they have maybe dementia, Alzheimer's, and all other cognitive deficits. They are not in touch with reality. So if you do not have a competent, compassionate caregiver or maid or house help to take care of them, the job to take care of people, nursing is a work of the heart. People Most people in Africa, some people are in it for the money, and especially if they hear that you have family abroad, they're coming in. They're not because they are passionate about what they're coming to do. They're coming in for the other external benefits. So taking care of somebody at the same time stealing from them, maltreating them, neglecting them, that is very common. It is very common. We have had to switch caregivers for our mother because it's just hard. It is difficult to get someone who is competent, compassionate, and present for them.
Okay, thank you so much, Teresa. Here in America, we have a lot of places that people can be trained to become caregivers.
Yeah.
When you first came to America as a young lady, you were able to get a 1 month training, and then you got additional training.
Mhm.
But yes, people are asking, where can we get the caregivers? We don't have um, quite, proper, training structures back home where we can
Mhm.
train people. I mean, when people are trained as nurses, they want to work in the hospital or something. But here in America, you got the 1 month training and you started out as a caregiver, and then
Mhm.
as you progressed, you continue to do more. So, what have you to say to Africans with regard to building capacity for caregivers and providing training opportunities for those who can take care of our, you know, elderly ones, loved
Mhm.
ones in the community. Is that something you would want to see blossom
Yeah.
in Africa, or do
Yeah,
you?
absolutely. Absolutely. I think it is possible. Africa is a rich continent. Cameroon, Nigeria, of course, it's a rich country. So a friend and I, a couple of days, we were talking about maybe setting up a funeral home, if just a funeral home service, talking about setting up elderly centers. So those things are possible. Africa is rich. It's just having a good infrastructure to provide those services. And so I think the money is there, the wealth is there, the resources are there. It's just having them in a good structure, organized. And I think that's where we come in. We need to go back home and establish these facilities, because we can sit here and complain about it all day, but they say it's better to light a candle than to curse the dark. So it is our duty to go back home and set up schools to train individuals for these roles, set up facilities, have the structures and infrastructure in place. It is very possible. I don't know what is holding us back, because the government cannot do it all, right? So we have to do our part.
Thank you so much. And yeah, sometimes there are also cultural issues,
Mhm,
religious issues. Africans always think that they have a different culture. They mustn't do their own things the way or the ways that Westerners do their own things. Do you think that there
mhm,
might be some cultural issues contributing to the lack of
mhm.
interest in caregivers, or is it that people can't just find good ones to take care of their loved ones?
It to get good quality caregivers is scarce. But again, I don't think culture, because if we are talking about doing this in a African setting, of course the culture is the same, right? So if we are to talk of maybe someone who is diabetic or hypertensive and needs a caregiver, a home care nurse, um, the food is the same. Vegetables are the same everywhere, proteins, carbohydrates, all of those nutrients are the same everywhere. It's just to get the right source, the right sources to provide for them. So the world is evolving. Africa is evolving. So things are not again. Things are no longer the way they were. People are open to change. I was in Cameroon last year. I see people who are hunger for change. I see young women who are hungry to get trainings, but they just lack sponsorship. So the willingness is there, but the resources are limited. But I tell them you can always start with what you have. Start from where you are.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have had
Mhm,
a robust conversation. It's been 45 minutes now. We've been talking and we're
mhm.
coming at the end of this great encounter.
Yeah.
We've learned quite a lot from you, and we have learned that it's important that elderly people be taken care of by trained caregivers who
Yeah.
understand how to check their vital signs, who understand how to manage their meals, who
Hmm.
can provide companionship for them, and who can interface, communicate with their loved ones, with their children and their sons and daughters, reporting back to them changes in their
Hmm.
lifestyles and everything. You have had it all, both at the structured facility and both at home. And so thank you so much for sharing your insights. And we are going
You're
home
welcome.
today knowing that this is the least we can do for our loved ones is to the least we can
Yeah.
do for them is to provide them with trained caregivers. The meds that we go and grab from the village, the houseboys that we go
Hmm.
grab from the village are no
It's
longer
risky.
knowledgeable enough.
Mhm.
It's either we train those
No.
houseboys or we hire trained ones to take care of them.
Yeah.
So this is part of what We are doing the CSAE Healthcare Asset Center, where we have been working with elders, training caregivers, and fighting for the rights and of the elders in Africa, most of
Mhm.
whom are always very much always forgotten, both by the government,
Yeah.
by their children that they have raised, and by their
Mhm.
community. Somebody has to speak up for them. And that's what we are doing at the CSAE Healthcare Access Center. And
Mhm.
if you're in Nigeria and if you want to know more about CSA Healthcare Access Center, you're welcome to reach out to us at chealth.csaainc.org. And once again, thank you, Teresa, for sharing your
Mhm.
insights. I will allow you to say your last word to our viewers from across the world. This is a webinar. People are viewing on Facebook, but after this encounter, the video will be on Facebook and on YouTube for many years to come. So, what are
Mhm.
your final thoughts? What are your final words to our viewers all over the world? And what do you say to our people, the Africans, who have left home for greener pastures and have left behind their aging parents and grandparents? What do you say to them regarding getting trained caregivers for their loved ones?
I strongly recommend trained caregivers for our loved ones back home. And even if we don't have loved ones back there, think of us. I talk to people now in their late 60s. They are planning to retire, and most people don't want to retire in America. Most people want to retire back home. So if we are not providing those services now, there will come a time where we will also need it. We will need those services. So we have to be proactive, think ahead of time. We have to start going back and making those plans, looking at our future. Where are we going to be during retirement? Are we going to get to our 80s and then we start to complain about not having the same facilities? So I think it's our time to go back and build, and provide quality education, have those structures in place, and in preparation for our own days, because nobody knows where how the end is going to be. So I really urge everyone to look into this project. Look into this project. Think of building something to cater for the elderly back home. We cannot afford to forget them. It could not be your biological parents, but you have aunts and uncles, and even just community members. There are people who can afford these things. When I went to Africa last year, I saw that people really do have money, but they just don't have the resources or the facilities or the amenities to purchase with this money. And so people who are shipping stuff, building back home, are not doing enough. So we need to do more. Not everyone is broke, not everyone is ignorant. Society is evolving. With social media now, people in the village are watching this. Everyone
Yeah.
has a phone, and people are very intentional in getting the education and awareness that is needed.
Thank you so much, Teresa. We have come to the end of this webinar, and you ended on a very high note, and something that struck me. I mean, in fact, that's one of the reasons why I even started talking about caregiving for elders, because even if you don't have elders today, and I'm quoting you, all of
Mhm.
us are going to get old, and many
Yeah,
of us here are preparing to go back home. So it would be a good idea to start supporting
yeah. Mhm.
projects, organizations, companies that
Mhm.
are training caregivers just in case we go home, or not just in case, because we are planning to go home. So
Yeah.
ourselves would need the caregivers as we are getting
Mhm.
old. And if we do not have trained caregivers back home, then who will take care of us when we
Yeah.
go in the next 10, 15,
Yeah.
20? And it's interesting because people are not investing in this sector. People are
Mhm.
building industries, hoping
Yeah.
that when
Yeah.
they retire in America, they can go home and run those industries. People
Yeah.
are starting businesses. planning that, oh, I have built my business. Once I retire, I go home and run my business. I have some of my friends who have just retired, returned home, and they have started out the
Mhm.
businesses they're building. One called me and said, I want to build a dialysis center. So when I retire, I can manage it. People are calling and setting up businesses. People are building properties, rental
Mhm.
properties. Their plan,
Mhm.
any African I meet here, no matter who, they tell me, oh, they're going to go home at retirement. But who will take care of us when we go home if we
Right.
don't have trained caregivers who will do that?
Yeah.
I think that's another angle to look at
Mhm.
it. And so
Yes.
maybe people should
Yes.
also start investing in
Mhm.
building the capacity of people of caregivers, like,
End of life care, because once this body breaks down, we
yeah,
can have elaborate plans, but you don't know what happens. You could
yeah,
just
yeah,
one
yeah.
trip to Africa, you can end up with a stroke there. What are you gonna
Yeah,
do?
yeah. So that's important that so we're calling people, and that's what we're doing at CSA. We're investing in caregiver programs because we
Yes.
know that soon, that there are older people at home and there are people who are here who are going to
Mhm.
start. I mean, when I started this program at CSA, I thought about my days at St. Elizabeth, and I said to myself, soon I'll be old, and if I go,
Mhm.
I will probably need and a good caregiver to take
You want
care,
the best, yeah.
yeah, take care of me. So yeah, so let's continue to spread the word, and we
Mhm.
welcome supporters, who want
Yeah.
to work with us to build a robust caregiving system in
Yes.
Africa, for our elders today and for those of
Yeah.
us who will become elders. Thank you,
Yes.
Teresa, and God bless you.
Thank you, Father God's will. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so
Thank you, Mr.
much.
Chi. Mhm.